What is the Black Lives Matter movement? Where did it originate? Well, the Black Lives Matter movement, more known as the BLM movement, is a movement that began as a hashtag 6 years ago on social media back in July of 2013 after the death of an African American teen, Trayvon Martin, earlier in February of 2012, who had been shot in the United States. To this day, the movement still continues, as unfortunately, the death of African American still continues due to police brutality.
We as a team are using Black Lives Matter to raise awareness about racism and police brutality. The Black Lives Matter movement is a stand against racism and police brutality. Therefore, it is an important lesson to all of us because living in a multicultural and multiracial country, racism tends to be a big issue. Everyone are all human beings, no matter the color of your skin. As such, we all deserve to have equal rights and equal opportunities. Just because the color of your skin are darker than anybody else doesn't mean you are any lesser than everyone else. Or just because the color of your skin are lighter than anyone doesn't mean you are better than everyone. We are all human beings and we are all equal and should also be treated equally. Just think about a day where racism gets so bad that a loved one can walk out in the middle of the night and not come back because a racist police officer, or in fact any random racist on the street, may have killed them.
I'm here to discuss about what is racism. Racism is defined as the belief that groups of humans possess different behavioral traits corresponding to physical appearance and can be divided based on the superiority of one race over another.
Meaning that prejudice or antagonism directed against other people because they are of a different race or ethnicity, like how modern variants of racism are often based in social perceptions of biological differences between people, especially skin color.
I heard that these views can take the form of social actions, practices, or beliefs, or political systems in which different races are ranked as inherently inferior to each other, based on presumed shared inheritable traits, abilities, or qualities. But there is also benevolent prejudice that can be applied to this. For example, in an experiment run by professionals, perception of African Americans held by European Americans show that they held hostile beliefs, indicating that they viewed African Americans as hostile, irresponsible, and loud. However, the same European American participants held benevolent beliefs that African Americans were athletic, religious, and had strong family ties. For example, famous NBA star LeBron James, tennis star Serena Williams, and boxer Muhammad Ali. The study was also done with African American participants who were asked to share their beliefs about European Americans. The African Americans said that European Americans were self-centered, greedy, stuffy or uptight, and sheltered from the real world. However, the same African Americans held benevolent beliefs that European Americans were intelligent, organized, independent, and financially well off, like Marilyn Monroe, Michael Phelps, and many more.
We discovered that it started in the 16th and 17th century. A key question among Christian religious hierarchy was whether blacks and Indians had souls and or were human. The Catholic and the Protestant churches arrived at different answers to the question at different times, which created significant differences between the two systems of slavery. The Catholic Church was the first to admit blacks and Indians had souls, which meant in many Catholic colonies it was against the law to kill a slave without reason. The Protestant Calvinist Church wanted to separate and distinguish themselves from Catholicism, and therefore was much slower in recognizing the humanity of Africans and Indians. With the increasing importance of slavery, religion was used as a means to justify racist divisions, classifying people of color as pagan and soulless. However, as a substantial number of people of color were converted to Christianity, and as religion itself lost much of its power as legitimizing agent, justifications for the brutality of slavery changed. The slave-based economy in the South necessitated a racist, exploitative system, which led to the development of biological, zoological, and botanical theories to explain human differences and to justify slavery.
Black Lives Matter or BLM. George Floyd, Barunatila, Eric Garner, Michael Brown. All these names bring to images of African Americans who had been senselessly killed in police brutality. In May this year, George Floyd died after being arrested by police outside shop in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Footage of the arrest shows a white police officer, Derek Chauvin, kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck when he was pinned to the floor. Transcriptions of police body cam footage showed Floyd said more than 20 times he could not breathe as he was restrained by the officers. Floyd died, and this has led to protests and demonstrations all over the US, spreading to all the way to Europe. The killing of George Floyd took the movement to areas it has not reached before. The movement is known as Black Lives Matter or BLM. There is no large context in history of African American men and boys who were killed at the hands of the police, many of whom, like George Floyd, were unarmed. Since 2014, other high-profile deaths include Tamir Rice, 2014, Lincoln Madonna, 2014, John Crawford, 2014, Freddie Gary, 2015, Weta Scott, 2015, Odon Stallings, 2016, Philando Castile, 2016, Terence Crutchers, 2016, and Don Rose, 2018, and others. Black women and girls are also targets of police violence, often ghosts and not dict. Women who have died as a result of police interactions includes Sandra Blunt, 2015, Deborah Dina, 2016, and Tatiana Jefferson, 2019, and Breonna Taylor, 2020. The Black Lives Matter Global Network is registered in US as a non-profit organization, one that is now getting grants and pledges from foundations and corporations, falling over themselves to align themselves with the movement. The movement now includes many of diverse backgrounds who had previously not felt connected to the cause. People of the different backgrounds and culture are now learning to combat racism in their own small community. While BLM is fast becoming a trend, there are also those who do not understand what BLM is and companies that just jump on the bandwagon to increase support from customers. For us, there in Malaysia, we can do our part too. I would suggest two ways. The first is to donate to BLM causes. Following the death of George Floyd in protests across the USA, a number of fundraising drivers has been set up to support Floyd's family, bail out protesters who have been arrested, and support the white Black Lives Matter movement. The second is to support petitions that are included in the wake of George Floyd's killing, and you can add your name now. Justice for Floyd and justice for George Floyd are demanding that all officers present at the Floyd's death be arrested and charged with the number. There are also petitions calling for justice for Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Billy McKinney, and many other black people killed in the past months. All of us, whether we are affected, slightly affected, or are lucky enough to not experience the feared and unfeared disadvantages that African Americans face, should do our part in this moment.
About the statistics of racial discriminations, studies found that blacks are more likely to face inequalities in the justice system compared to white because of their skin colors. All of us can relate to the incident that happened lately in the United States, which is the George Floyd case. In terms of income and livelihood, studies found that the poverty rate for African Americans was 20.8%, more than twice that for non-Hispanic whites. This has had far-reaching consequences on everything from food security to housing, health insurance, and education. Besides, one of the studies also found that about 40% of the homeless in the United States are African Americans, even though they just made up of 13% of the country's population. Racial inequality expresses itself in a myriad of other ways in everyday life. Studies have found that African Americans continue to be discriminated against at work and during the hiring process. Extensive academic research and data collected by the federal government and researchers has also documented numerous ways that Black Americans experience life differently in the United States than their white counterparts. It's called the systemic racism, which is nearly ingrained in every way people move through society. Since the coronavirus pandemic and the subsequent lockdown has triggered the recession starting in March, employment for all racial groups has fallen dramatically, and fewer than half of all Black Americans in the United States get a job in April and May 2020. This causes the employment population ratio for the Black Americans to fall historically low. Apart from that, the Bureau of Labor Statistics also shows that 54% of employed Asians work in management, professional, and related occupations, which is the highest paying major occupational category compared to 41% of employed whites and 31% of employed blacks. This in part can be explained by the racist hiring practices during the hiring process that kept black out of business. This can also be explained by many subtle forms of prejudice today.
How can we fix racism in this current society? Well, racism often exists in this world because of the different races in this world. By being treated differently because of skin color and culture, racism can happen anytime and anywhere. Racial discrimination also persists and profoundly exists and affect life chances and the habits of everyday life. Despite how persistent racism is, the influence of racial discrimination are still underdeveloped. How can we fix this racial problem? Well, one of them is to stand up for each other as well as providing a support structure. The media plays an powerful role and important role in conveying messages to the public. For example, we should write letters to the public. We can show the public that we are trying to increase their awareness. For example, by writing letters to the editor or local newspaper, or contact the local TV or radio station. By writing a letter or contacting them, it will increase their awareness about racial problems that we are facing in which they cover the news. We can also attract their attention by giving and organizing presentations. Presenting about the values and the traditions of other cultures and other ethnicity, people should also make an effort to support events that celebrate the culture or tradition of different races to unite each other. Organizing peaceful protest rallies and many more can increase the awareness that racism still exists.
we can also call the bigotry and hate speech, such as overhearing someone telling a racist joke. They should stand up for them by speaking up and telling them that stereotyping isn't harmless. There's nothing funny about using humor to normalize dangerous idea or perpetuate ugly stereotypes. The public should also stand up for people being harassed. For example, intervene when it's safe to do so, when you witness someone being harassed or physically attacked. This is because when the public stands in solidarity, bigots lose their power. Verbal and physical abuse is wrong and should not be tolerated. All people deserve to be treated with dignity and humanity.
Is taught and learned, especially since a young age. This type of behavior is usually fueled by information easily accessible on the internet and books. This is especially true for systemic racism, which is a clear indication of constant perpetuation of the same kind of mistakes, allowed by everyone around it. There are a number of people who will not question such actions, mainly because it has been seen as normal or natural, simply due to how often it happens. The information and history available to the public plays a role in bolstering racism, whereby certain expectations are placed on every race to place focus on the roles which have been taken by various races in the past. These expectations become dangerous as they are easily twisted, notably in the hands of a conservative, thus creating echo chambers which further develop those expectations into covert racism. Therefore, it is important that such information which are easily available needs to be re-evaluated, primarily by the younger generations who are still in school and in constant influence by said information. One must learn to look at these information through unbiased eyes. History has always been written by the victors of the past, and as such will always contain biased undertones, either through the downplayed portrayal of the losers or the overblown marveling of the victors. Many claim that history is taught so that people won't repeat past mistakes, but that is only true for those who are willing to put more mind into understanding it. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, because one can never truly grasp the true story by only skimming the surface. That little knowledge is easily poisoned by others who are able to fill in the blanks. Ultimately, racism can only truly be combated if everyone put their minds to it, by removing the biased associations which accompanies every race and seeing people for who they are now instead of who they were in the past. Therein lies the reason why some things have changed, why some values are forgotten.
Understand can eliminate fear. Communication can overcome hostility. However, we cannot just contact without communication. We should communicate with other people to understand their habits and culture. So, how we to fix the problem of racial issue? The kind communication environment is first preliminary treatment of avoid racial discrimination and communication need to achieve a principle: respect for ethnic diversity and the culture of all ethnic groups. Avoid using malicious words and making joke of racial culture. These are commonly of matter we can accomplish and observe for prevention of racial prejudice. Principle also can use on the internet that is sent to reality society. We should take attention to our behavior. Of course, it's very difficult for us to avoid and correct those who have already had racial discrimination. For people like more racist, law enforcement is more effective than persuasion, so the law can able to restrain people behavior. Effective enforcement of law able to keep the society stable. Enforcement of law can able to prevent social violence, jealousy, hostility. For example, not incite racial trouble and spread rumors maliciously. University is very well communication environment. The school authority encourage students to integrate into the campus environment. Different students, including from various ethnic groups and students from the country, can effectively contact and communicate in the university environment. Students are asked to form a group to solve the problem in the coursework. The benefits of this are not only to develop student teamwork, but also solve the problem that they don't understand as others. In terms of communication, students will make their own opinion and opinion when trying to complete the problem. Invisible, different view and opinion will emerge, and a student will understand and recognize their teammate in the process. Team formation is conducive to understanding the grouping form of students of all ethnic group and international students. We cannot reject the group form purposely. This not only lost the opportunity to broaden one's own correction, but also produce diversion and gaps in the understanding of the rest.
In conclusion, this video is to raise the awareness of people about Black Lives Matter. Our community is now hurting. The systemic inequalities and racism of the society face has once again shaken us to the core. A lot of people lost their life unfairly. The systemic mistreatment of Black community has to end so that everyone feels safe living in their neighborhood. We should stand for equalities and racial justice. We should not remain silent in the front of injustice. We use our voice and action to support them. All of us should be parts of Black Lives Matter allies. Only if we work and stand together, we will make this world a better place.